I never should have been scrolling through my phone at 3 in the morning. The dim light of my bedroom barely illuminated the mess I called a living space. Textbooks stacked haphazardly, a half-empty cup of instant coffee on the desk, and my phone buzzing with notifications that I didn't want to check. But my curiosity, or maybe my reckless impulsiveness, won this time. I was supposed to be sending a private message to Jaehoon, someone I'd been crushing on quietly for months. Someone who didn't know how much I wanted him. My thumb hovered nervously over the screen, and I typed the message in a voice I'd never dare to say out loud. I can't stop thinking about you, about last night. I wish you were here with me. My fingers trembled slightly as I added a few more words, risque enough to make my cheeks burn with shame even as I pressed send. But that's when my world shifted. The little pop-up at the top of my screen wasn't Jaehoon's name. It was someone else's. Someone I had been avoiding like my life depended on it. Hyunsoo. Lee Hyunsoo. The name alone made my stomach knot. The Mafia alpha of Seoul's underworld. The man everyone whispered about but no one dared approach. The kind of man whose reputation could make grown men tremble. The kind of man who could ruin you with a single glance, or kill you without a second thought. And I had just sent him a message meant for someone I had a crush on. I stared at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. My brain refused to process. No. I frantically tapped the screen, hoping, somehow, that there was a way to unsend it. But there wasn't. The message was gone, floating somewhere in Hyunsoo's inbox, waiting for him to see it. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. I wanted to crawl under my blanket and disappear. But the worst part, I realized with a sickening twist in my stomach, was that there was no one to protect me from myself. It took him less than 10 minutes. My phone vibrated violently, and I froze, my eyes wide. The screen lit up with his name. Lee Hyunsoo. I hadn't even opened it yet. Just seeing it made my hands sweat. A single line appeared in the chat preview. We need to talk. That's all. No emojis. No explanation. Just those 3 words. I wanted to run. I wanted to vanish from my apartment, from Seoul, from existence. But I couldn't. I was rooted to my spot, staring at the phone as if it were a snake about to strike. The next hour passed in a blur. I tried to focus on my studies, tried to convince myself that maybe he hadn't seen the message yet. But deep down I knew. By 7 in the morning, the message had changed. Another line appeared, I'll be by your apartment tonight. Don't leave. My heart skipped a beat. My pulse raced. My thoughts scrambled. Don't leave? What the hell does that even mean? I spent the day avoiding my usual coffee shop, pretending to be sick at work, anything to buy time. But there's no hiding from someone like him. His name was whispered in every corner of Seoul's criminal underworld, and even though I wasn't involved in that life, I felt his presence like a shadow looming over the city. By the time night fell, I had made a decision. I wasn't leaving my apartment. I would wait. Maybe if I stayed calm, if I stayed quiet, maybe he'd change his mind. Of course, that was ridiculous. The knock at my door came precisely at 9 o'clock. Sharp, deliberate. Not a timid knock. Not a casual tap. A knock that said I am Hyunsoo, and I am here. I froze, clutching the edge of my desk like it would somehow protect me. My breathing grew shallow, and I felt the warmth of sweat pooling at my temples. The knock came again, louder this time. Open the door, a voice said, low and smooth, carrying a weight that made my chest ache. I swallowed hard. My hands shook as I reached for the doorknob. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to disappear. But when I opened the door, I froze again, not because of fear, exactly, but because of the man standing in front of me. Hyunsoo was impossibly tall, broader than anyone I'd ever seen in person, dressed in a tailored black suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a dangerous dream. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and his eyes, cold, calculating, yet something else, studied me. He didn't smile, didn't frown. He simply tilted his head slightly, like a predator assessing its prey. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asked, his voice calm but carrying an edge that made my knees go weak. I shook my head, words failing me. He stepped closer, and I could smell the faint hint of expensive cologne, leather, and something primal that made my stomach clench. You've sent me a message, a very interesting message. Meant for someone else, apparently. My face burned hotter than I thought possible. I wanted to close the door, wanted to apologize, wanted to tell him it was a mistake, but I couldn't. His presence anchored me in place, terrifying and magnetic all at once. I didn't mean to, I stammered. He studied me for a long, silent moment. Then, without warning, he leaned in just slightly, close enough that I could see the faint smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Interesting, he repeated, slower this time, savoring the word. I felt like my heart might explode. My mind screamed at me to get away, but my body refused. I couldn't stop staring at him. Couldn't stop the sick thrill of fear and something else. Desire? Curiosity? Hyunsoo straightened, taking a step back. Don't worry, he said finally, voice softer, almost playful. I'm not angry. Not yet, anyway. I exhaled shakily, though the tension didn't leave my body. Every nerve in me was on high alert. Then, what do you want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled then, a brief, dangerous curl of his lips that sent shivers down my spine. I want to see you. In person. We'll discuss your message. And your intentions. Intentions. That word sent a thrill through me, mingled with terror. I don't think that's a good idea, I said, my voice shaking. Good idea? He echoed, stepping closer again, the scent of him invading my senses. My dear Omega, there is no good or bad idea here. Only what is. And with that, he turned on his heel and left, the sound of his footsteps echoing down the hall like a promise or a threat. I sank to the floor, my phone still clutched in my trembling hands. My mind was a whirlwind of panic and excitement. I had just invited a storm into my life, and somehow, against all reason, I couldn't stop thinking about it. He's coming back. I didn't know if I should scream, run, or throw myself onto the floor and cry. But deep down, a tiny, dangerous part of me, an Omega part one barely recognized, felt alive. Something about Hyunsoo's presence, his calm dominance, the terrifying allure in his eyes, made my pulse race in a way I had never felt before. And just like that, my ordinary, quiet life in Seoul was gone. The Mafia Alpha knew my name. He knew my secret. And the game had begun. I hadn't slept all night. The accidental message, Hyunsoo's ominous, "We need to talk," and the memory of his footsteps at my door played on repeat in my mind. Every shadow in my apartment seemed like him, every vibration of my phone a warning. I tried to tell myself it was just a fluke. Maybe he wouldn't come. Maybe he'd lost interest after seeing how ridiculous my message was. But deep down, I knew better. I reached for my phone again, and my thumb hovered over the chat. His last message still burned on the screen. "We'll meet tonight. Don't leave." I couldn't stop thinking about the first time I ever had his number. It had been months ago, in the back alley behind a small, nondescript cafe in Gangnam. I had been delivering pastries for my part-time job, and trouble had found me in the form of a group of men I'd accidentally crossed in a minor debt dispute. I didn't even see him at first, just a tall figure in a black coat, stepping out of the shadows like he belonged there. "Are you okay?" His voice had been low but commanding, and before I could answer, he had stepped between me and the men, speaking a few words in a calm, dangerous tone. They left immediately. I had been shaking, frozen, and he had just watched me for a moment. Then, almost casually, he handed me his phone. "If you ever need help, call me," he said. And just like that, he was gone, disappearing into the night. I had saved his number under Hyunsoo and promptly forgotten about it. A curiosity, a mystery, nothing more. Until tonight. Now, the memory felt like a warning echoing through me. I had called him once, months later, for a minor issue at the cafe, nothing important, but we had never spoken beyond that. Yet somehow, I had his number. And now, by some cruel twist of fate, my risque message had landed in the hands of Seoul's most feared man. The knock at my door came again, sharp and deliberate. My heart lurched and I froze. The sound was like a drumbeat signaling the arrival of something inevitable. I opened the door, trying to act casual, but my hands betrayed me, shaking visibly. Hyunsoo stood there as if he had been carved from the night itself, tall, impeccably dressed, eyes sharp and piercing. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, and I realized immediately that this wasn't a casual visit. "Min," he said, his gaze sweeping over me, lingering where it made me most uncomfortable. "We need to discuss your message." I swallowed hard. I didn't mean for you to see it," I stammered, suddenly aware of how small I felt in his presence. He tilted his head slightly, studying me, and I felt as if he could see every secret, every hidden thought I had ever tried to bury. "Didn't mean to see it? Or did you mean for me to see it?" His voice was low, teasing, and it sent a shiver down my spine I didn't want to admit. It was meant for someone else," I whispered, the truth catching in my throat. He took a step closer, the faint scent of his cologne, leather, and something darker filling the air around me. "Yet somehow," he said slowly, almost savoring the words, "you chose the wrong number." My pulse jumped and I felt my knees go weak. I had expected anger, maybe a harsh rebuke, maybe even a threat. This dangerous, magnetic curiosity. Hyunsoo moved around the apartment slowly, taking it in, and I felt exposed under his gaze. "You know, most people would be terrified of me," he said, voice smooth, almost amused. "But you're shaking, yes, but not just from fear, are you?" I tried to protest, tried to find my voice, but it faltered. My thoughts tumbled, scattered between panic and something else, something forbidden and intoxicating. He crouched slightly to meet my eye level, just enough to feel intimate without being overt. "You've been avoiding me for months, yet here we are. Tell me, what is it about me that makes you want to hide?" I swallowed hard, my mind racing. I don't know why I'm drawn to him. Why my chest races and my hands sweat every time I see him. He's dangerous. He's terrifying. And yet, Hyunsoo straightened, stepping back just slightly. "Interesting," he murmured, almost to himself. Then his eyes locked onto mine, sharp and commanding. "You've made a mistake, Minjae. But maybe it's a mistake I don't mind exploring." I felt my stomach twist. His words were a trap, a promise, and a dare all at once. The line between danger and desire blurred so sharply I wasn't sure which I felt more, fear or curiosity. He circled me like a predator, every step deliberate, and I felt small, vulnerable, but alive in a way I hadn't felt before. "I'll be back tomorrow night," he said finally, stopping near the doorway. "And next time, I expect answers. Real answers." I nodded mutely, unable to speak. My pulse was still racing, my breath shallow. He turned and left, the echo of his footsteps leaving a hollow thrill in my chest. I sank to the floor, phone clutched tightly in my hand. Every part of me screamed that I was in over my head, that I had just invited a storm into my life. And yet, despite the fear, despite the terror of what could come next, a tiny, reckless part of me, an omega part one barely understood, thrived on the thought that Hyunsoo had noticed me, that he was curious, intrigued. The city outside my window was alive with lights and noise, but in my apartment, time felt frozen. Seoul had always been my home, my quiet life, my routine. And now, everything had changed. The Mafia Alpha knew my name. He knew my secret. And he would return. Tomorrow night, I realized with a shiver, there would be no hiding. I never thought I'd willingly step into Hyunsoo's world. And yet, there I was, clutching my bag with hands that refused to stop trembling, waiting outside a sleek black car parked in the alley behind my apartment. Its tinted windows reflected the neon glow of Seoul's streets, giving it the look of something untouchable, dangerous, and belonging entirely to him. The message had been brief but clear. "Meet me. I'll be waiting." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my racing heart. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn away, to vanish into the night and pretend none of this had ever happened. But the thought of him, the way he had studied me, smirked at my panic, made me feel alive, was stronger than my fear. The car door opened silently, and he gestured for me to get in. I hesitated, my breath catching as I met his dark eyes. "You don't trust me," he observed, his voice calm but sharp. Yet you came. That says more than words ever could. I lowered my gaze, unable to argue. There was truth in his observation. Fear and curiosity warred inside me, leaving me paralyzed. Finally, I nodded and he leaned back, closing the door behind me. The interior of the car was immaculate, black leather, minimalistic, with a faint scent of leather and something uniquely him. Every detail screamed wealth, control, danger. And I felt like an intruder in a world I had no business entering. Hyunsoo started the car without a word, the city lights reflecting across his face. "Relax," he said suddenly, and I flinched. "Or at least try. I promise I won't hurt you, unless you give me reason to." His words sent a shiver through me, not just fear, but a strange, electric thrill. My pulse raced and I realized I was holding my breath. The car moved smoothly through Seoul streets, weaving through neon-lit avenues and quiet alleyways. After 20 minutes, we arrived at a high-rise building I had only seen in passing. The kind of building that belonged to people who existed in a world I didn't know, one where money, power, and influence shaped every inch. Hyunsoo led me inside, swiping a keycard, and I followed silently, overwhelmed by the polished marble, soft lighting, and the subtle hum of security measures that made the place feel alive. "This is my space," he said finally, letting the words linger. "You're safe here. For now." I swallowed, trying to keep my panic under control. The apartment, or penthouse as I now realized it was vast. Floor-to-ceiling windows gave a panoramic view of Seoul at night, its neon glow stretching to the horizon. Expensive furniture, art that made my eyes ache from curiosity, and an aroma of something intoxicating filled the space. Every detail was carefully chosen. Every inch screamed control. And yet, there was a warmth in the way he moved around it, a subtle vulnerability I hadn't expected. He offered me a seat on a low leather couch. I hesitated, then sat, my legs pressed tightly together. Hyunsoo leaned against the armrest, his gaze never leaving me. "You're smaller than I imagined," he observed, a note of curiosity in his tone. "Easily overlooked, yet here you are, caught in the middle of my world." I bit my lip, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. I didn't mean to intrude," I stammered. He smiled then, a brief, dangerous curl of his lips. "Intrude?" He shook his head slowly. "No, Minjae, you didn't intrude. You were brought here by your own choices. And I'm fascinated by them, by you." The way he said my name, soft, deliberate, charged, made my pulse spike. I tried to keep my breathing steady, but it faltered under his gaze. Every word he spoke seemed to penetrate deeper than it should, unraveling me piece by piece. As the night stretched on, Hyunsoo showed me his world, not the criminal side, but the personal. The quiet moments between meetings, the rare glimpses of vulnerability he allowed himself. I learned about the weight he carried, the loneliness behind his dominance, and the rare moments where he laughed softly at nothing at all. Those moments made him more dangerous to me than his reputation ever could. I wanted him. I feared him. I was drawn to him in a way I couldn't name. And then there were the touches. Subtle at first, a hand brushing mine as he handed me a glass of water, a finger lingering against my wrist while gesturing. Each contact was deliberate, electric, and unnerving. I flinched, wanting to pull away, yet craving more. "Why are you trembling?" he asked softly one moment, his gaze intense, searching. I trailed off, unable to answer. Fear, desire, confusion, it all tangled inside me. "Min," he said again, his voice lower, commanding yet intimate, "you are terrified of me. And yet you're here. Tell me, do you want to be here? Truly?" My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't answer. I could only nod slightly, aware that this admission, however silent, meant surrendering to something dangerous. Hyunsoo's lips curved into a small, approving smile. He leaned closer, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him, the quiet power in his presence pressing against me. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to run, yet every part of me ached to stay, to feel closer, to understand why he had this effect on me. He circled me once, slowly, like he was marking territory, not threateningly, but with a subtle claim that left my body reacting in ways I couldn't control. "You're fascinating," he murmured, "and dangerous in your own way. You think you're safe, hidden behind your fears, but I see you. All of you." I swallowed, my throat dry. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to," he said, and his hand brushed my cheek lightly, a fleeting, feather-like touch that left me dizzy. "Your silence says enough." My heart pounded so hard I thought he would hear it. His eyes searched mine, and for a terrifying moment, it felt like he could see every thought, every secret desire I had. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Then, the tension snapped suddenly. Hyunsoo leaned back, giving me space, though the atmosphere still burned with unspoken electricity. This is dangerous, he said softly, almost to himself. "And yet, it's irresistible." I shivered, caught between fear and longing. The apartment felt smaller now, as if the air itself had become charged. Every glance, every subtle touch, every unspoken word was a test, a challenge, and a temptation I wasn't sure I could resist. Finally, he stood, moving toward the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out over Seoul. I realized then that this man, the alpha I had been avoiding, fearing, and somehow yearning for, was more than just danger. He was magnetic, vulnerable in ways he barely admitted, and utterly, irrevocably captivating. The night ended with him walking me to the door, close enough that our shoulders brushed, close enough that I could smell the faint mix of his cologne and something uniquely him. "Tomorrow," he said softly, almost a whisper, "we continue. And next time, I expect more honesty." I nodded mutely, my legs weak. The door closed behind me, but the warmth of his presence lingered, leaving me trembling, my pulse still racing, my thoughts consumed by him. As I collapsed onto my bed, I realized one thing with terrifying clarity. The attraction between us was undeniable. Dangerous, intoxicating, and unavoidable. I was caught in a storm of desire and fear, craving the very man I should run from. And the stakes were high, higher than I had ever imagined. But even as I tried to calm myself, one thought lingered in the back of my mind. I wanted him to come back. I wanted him. The days after that night passed in a haze. I couldn't focus on work, on school, on anything. Every thought circled back to Hyunsoo, the dangerous alpha whose presence had left me both terrified and trembling with desire. I caught myself replaying his words, the brush of his fingers against my wrist, the way his dark eyes had searched mine as if reading every hidden corner of my mind. Seoul was alive outside my window, neon signs flickering, taxis honking, and people bustling through the streets, but inside, my apartment felt smaller, suffocating, as if the air itself was charged with the memory of him. I knew it was coming, he always came back, but I also knew I could not pretend anymore. I could not hide from the storm he had brought into my life. The knock on my door that evening was sharp, deliberate, inevitable. My heart jumped into my throat. I swallowed hard, smoothing my clothes, straightening my hair, trying to appear calm. His voice came through the door, low and commanding. "Open up." I did. Hyunsoo stood there, as imposing as ever. But this time, there was something different in his expression. The dangerous, predatory gleam remained, but beneath it, I caught something softer, a flicker of vulnerability, a shadow of honesty he rarely allowed anyone to see. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, and I couldn't help the shiver that ran down my spine. "You didn't run," he observed, almost a statement, not a question. "But I was beginning to think you might." "But I wanted to understand," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I needed to know why you intrigue me so much. Why I can't stop thinking about you." He tilted his head slightly, eyes dark and intense, studying me as if weighing my words. "And have you found your answer?" I shook my head, though the truth was, I had no idea how to articulate the whirlwind of fear, fascination, and desire that Hyunsoo brought out in me. "But I'm scared," I admitted. "But I don't want to stay away either." His gaze softened imperceptibly, just enough to make my chest ache. He moved closer, and I felt the heat radiating from him, a pull I couldn't resist. Fear, he murmured, is a part of desire, Min. The two are intertwined. You don't get one without the other. My breath caught, and I realized how small I felt in his presence. How much power he had over me. And yet, there was safety there too, or at least the strange illusion of it. Hyunsoo circled me slowly, deliberate, like a dancer testing the space around a partner. You think you're fragile? Well, overlooked, he said softly, brushing a strand of hair from my face. But you're not. You're stronger than you know. And you're compelling. I swallowed hard, words failing me. Every nerve in my body was alive, my skin tingling with his nearness, every instinct screaming both fear and desire. He stopped, close enough that I could feel his breath against my face. I've been watching you, he admitted softly, almost vulnerably. Not in a threatening way, in a way that made me curious. About you. About what you hide. About who you are when no one is looking. I felt my chest tighten. That admission, quiet and sincere, melted something in me. The man who terrified everyone, who commanded respect and fear, was revealing a piece of himself to me. A piece no one else had ever seen. But I didn't know you'd, my voice faltered. I didn't think anyone like you could. See me? He finished my sentence, a small, teasing smile tugging at his lips. Or want me? I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight. But my body betrayed me, leaning subtly toward him, drawn by the same magnetic pull that had refused to release me for days. Hyunsoo studied me for a long moment, then stepped back, giving me just enough space to breathe, but not enough to escape. Do you know how rare it is, he said softly, to find someone who can stir me like this? Someone who can both terrify me and make me curious. I shook my head slightly, heart hammering. I don't know how to stop feeling this way, I admitted. His eyes softened further, dark intensity giving way to something almost tender. You don't have to stop, he murmured. You just need to accept it. And in that moment, I realized I wanted to accept it. I wanted to surrender to the storm he brought into my life. I wanted to feel, even if it was dangerous, even if it hurt. He moved closer again, and this time, I didn't flinch. His hand brushed my cheek, lingering longer than it needed to, and I felt my knees weaken. His touch was electric, igniting every nerve in my body. Min, he whispered, you are mine. In some way, whether you realize it or not, you belong in my world. The words sent a thrill of fear and desire coursing through me. I started, then paused, realizing I couldn't stop the truth from spilling out. I want to be here. With you. Even if it's dangerous. Hyunsoo's lips curved into a small, approving smile. Good, he murmured, leaning just enough to let our foreheads touch. Because I don't do things halfway. Our eyes locked, and for a long, silent moment, the tension between us was almost unbearable. I could feel his pulse, the warmth radiating from him, the slow, deliberate power in his presence. And yet, there was tenderness too, a rare, fleeting softness that made my heart ache. He pulled back just slightly, letting the air thicken with anticipation. Tomorrow, he said, voice low, commanding, yet intimate, we continue. And I want honesty, Minjae. Full honesty. No hiding. I nodded, understanding fully that this was more than a simple meeting. This was an initiation into his world, a surrender to something both thrilling and terrifying. I didn't know what would happen next, didn't know how much I could take, didn't know if I would survive the storm of desire and danger he represented. But I knew one thing. I wanted him. And for the first time, I accepted it. Seoul sprawled beneath us, alive with lights, noise, and endless possibilities. But inside the apartment, in that charged, intimate space, it felt like the city had disappeared. There was only him. Only us. Only the dangerous, intoxicating pull that neither of us could deny. And as he left that night, giving me a lingering glance that promised both challenge and temptation, I knew that my life had changed forever. The fear remained, yes, but it was interlaced with a desire so intense I could hardly breathe. I was caught between surrender and self-preservation, but but I didn't care anymore. Hyunsoo had shown me his world, his vulnerability, and his dominance. And in return, I had revealed my desire, my fear, and my willingness to step into the unknown. The storm was coming, but for the first time, I didn't want to hide from it. I wanted to face it, head on, heart racing, and utterly captivated by the man who had turned my world upside down. Because now, I was no longer just a pawn in his world. I was part of it, and I wanted to be.